Hello everyone, welcome to another video. This is Grandmaster Cemil Ali, also known as JJ Ali, and in this video I would like to analyze the new and very interesting gambit called the Nakhmanson Gambit. It's a very popular and very recent opening, and lately I've been trying to understand the idea behind it, and I would like to share you some of the work I have already done, and we might actually build on while analyzing the positions arising in the opening. So I did connect to an engine just so that you guys can see that it is actually legit, and I will try to double check my analysis, and with this you will also be able to see how a grandmaster works on his own openings and also saves them and maybe even updates them, because I have looked at this line quite a bit days ago, let's say maybe like a week ago, but I would like to update it to its maximum by checking it with a recent engine again. So I know 1 week is not a big deal, but again, this is a stronger engine relatively to what I worked with before. So let's compare our analysis. So what is the Nakhmanson Gambit? It happens after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6, and in this position, of course, white can play other moves such as knight g5 and try to go for the fried liver attack, but here white prefers to go d4. And after the most common e takes d4, short castles, black takes on e4, and almost every single game in this position, as the engine also suggests, continues with their move rook e1. And after d5, bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3. There are plenty of games which have been played by grandmasters, and it's approximately equal, I should say. But the Nakhmanson Gambit starts after the move knight c3. So what is the idea of knight c3? As you can see, the engine is already putting the yellow signal, which is generally an indication of not the best move. But you can also observe that although white is losing a piece after d takes c3, the evaluation is currently less than -1. So it's now showing the red signal, which generally indicates a blunder. But as you can see, after d takes c3, white will be down a piece, but still the evaluation is below +1 for black side. And you should understand what -1 or +1 actually indicates. And this is the analogy. When you're down a piece, normally you would expect something around +3 if the piece is captured with almost no compensation. So if the computer is giving +1 for the side who is up a piece, this clearly means that there is some sort of tricks or compensation for the piece side, the side which has the less piece, I should say, the side who lost the piece. So of course d takes c3 should be the main line, and here I see that d c3 is the main line and not quite in my analysis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click it and actually promote it so that d takes c3 is the main line. But before we go on d takes c3, we have to understand what happens in the other lines. For example, I've seen the move knight d6 in my online database, and here I check this move queen e2, which is still decent enough. As you can see, there's a slight difference between move number 1 and move number 3. So this was my analysis. Queen e2, bishop e7, knight d5. White wants to get the bishop pair in return for the 2 pawns he has already given up, and after a few trades we get a position like this. Although black has the bishop pair, white is down a pawn, but he has slightly better development advantage, and in this position you can try to play for compensation. Once again, this is one of the most solid ways black can go for, but reminding you guys that after knight c3 it is very unlikely that a player will go knight d6 because of the tempting capture of the knight on c3. So here two options are very important: knight takes c3 and d takes c3. Well, before we go into d takes c3, which is the most important move and probably should wait before analyzing that, we should go and check knight takes c3. And here I did not really stick too long with the lines either, because I think white has a few ways of getting an okay position and confusing your opponents. So here b takes c3, although rook e1 is also possible. d5, bishop b5, pinning the knight and threatening to pick up the d4 pawn on the next move. If you take, for example, on c3 and become greedy with the black player, having 3 extra pawns, and you see that the engine is already showing 0.09 for white, which means that although white is down 3 pawns, he has a lot of compensation. And after knight takes knight d4 or even knight e5, one of the two, let's go knight d4, the main suggested move. A line is given by queen d6, and these are very precise, by the way, and note that not every single player can find these precise moves, but you have to understand why most of these moves are played. So knight takes, b takes. White would love to take on c6 here, but the queen is guarding c6. So now white plays this move bishop a3, trying to provoke the black's queen, and his only move is absolutely to take it. Bishop c6, bishop d7, bishop takes a8, so white gets some material back, and he's also threatening the d5 pawn with his queen and the bishop. So black plays the move c6, defending his pawn, and he wants to castle on the next move, since his queen is doing a great job defending his bishop on a7. And after queen e2, trying to prevent black from castling, black can go basically queen d6. I believe it's with the idea to go bishop e6 and then to castle on the next move. And to check what black wants, actually, now I'm going to press the letter X on my keyboard, and it's going to give the move to black, which shows if it's black to move, what would he play? And this is a very nice tool. And if it's black to play, the engine says that black would play king f8 in this position instead of castles or bishop e6. So king f8 is the current threat instead of bishop to e6. And in this position, I'm going to get back and I would approximately evaluate this as roughly unclear. So I put an unclear sign and I don't do anything else. I leave it as it is. So instead of d takes c3, the greedy approach, black of course goes for bishop to e7. And after bishop e7, white can proceed in multiple ways. I checked bishop takes c6. You can play other moves as well, but probably bishop takes c6 is the best way to continue. Knight e5, bishop d7. Here queen f3 is a little sneaky, unexpected threat on f7, but of course black doesn't fall for that. C takes d4, and a few moves can be played, such as these moves, and the position is about equal. So I'm kind of showing you ins and outs of this gambit. Basically, I don't claim that it's entirely winning, but as you can see, black has to play some tough moves to actually keep his advantage or keep it about equal. So why do we play such gambits? Well, we play gambits against people who might not know what they're facing. And this generally happens when they accept the gambit immediately with the move like d takes c3. And after d takes c3, here we play another sacrifice, which is great. And I was very happy when I saw this, because this really is an interesting style of play while you try to get initiative as fast as you can. And I was amazed by how difficult the lines are after black actually plays the most natural move d takes c3. Given the fact that when you play the move knight c3 so quickly, your opponents might understand you're prepared. So this is a typical response from your opponents when you play something which is out of the regular expected moves. When you play something really different, they do tend to expect that you're prepared. But this is only if they are thinking smart way. So here we go bishop f7. And after the obvious king takes f7, we go queen d5 check. And as you can see in my notes, I have annotations that black plays king f6 exclamation mark. But you can easily realize that this is a very dangerous place for the black king. And the queen is on d8. But sadly enough for white, bishop g5 doesn't actually do anything, because after knight takes g5, queen takes g5, king f7 let's say, you cannot take the queen because knight takes d8 simply recaptures the queen. And this position is obviously winning for black since he's up 2 bishops and 2 pawns. So this is winning for black. This would absolutely be a double question mark, which is a blunder. So in this position, we have few options here. Queen takes e4 is actually the expected move. This is what your opponent would expect, and you're threatening to go bishop g5 check. But it's actually not the best move. You have to be careful. When you're playing a gambit, you would ideally like to create the most chances for yourself. So here, we're threatening bishop g5 check, and the only move, which means the square in the annotation, is to play bishop e7. But why not something like h6, I ask myself. This technically prevents the bishop g5 check motives. But here we can play this brilliant move, knight h4. As the arrows indicate, we're threatening something like queen f5, queen g6, or some ideas with rook e1 also included to cover up the e-file, and the black king on f6 is doing very poorly. A sample line can go with d6, preventing a queen f5 check idea, but now we can use the g6 square, go rook e1 check, and here king d7 is met by queen e6 checkmate or queen f5. It is up to you. This is completely your preference, and generally you don't get such preferences, I'll tell you that. So knight e5 is the only move, and here bishop f4. We're developing more pieces. We're bringing more pieces into the attack. Maybe we'll play rook d1 so that we control the d file, and we're bringing pieces which were not involved in the attack. And here after king d7, I was wondering, how do we exactly win? Because the question which popped into my mind was, if I go rook d1 now, which is very tempting to develop with giving a check, here black plays the move bishop d6, and therefore this is actually not so accurate. And the better move here is knight to f3, threatening knight e5. And here if black plays bishop d6, now you can take on e5, and after bishop takes, rook takes, you can go rook d1 on the next move, and there is no dark squared bishop which can block the file on d6. So that's why this is totally winning. But the problem with all this is that h6 is actually the losing move. The correct move is bishop e7, and if your opponent is aware of this, you might not get the chances you just got in the previous move. So here I analyzed the move knight g5, which is threatening queen f4, queen f7. But another thing which came to my mind right now is what happens if I go queen f4 check now. So black can go king g6, of course, doesn't go to the e-file. And here, if you continue to try to checking your opponent, let's say from g4 or e4, he can simply run away. And remember, you're down a piece and a pawn. So if you allow your opponent to consolidate, which means to develop his pieces while he's up material, he will definitely be winning. So queen f4 check doesn't actually do anything. And after a move like knight g5, here black simply plays the only move, once again, d5. And the only move, you have to always put it in your analysis, so I put it as a square symbol such that I can actually see it whenever I go through the lines, and d5 is actually the only move. And I clearly observed that. And after queen f4, the idea is to go bishop f5. Because note that if you go king g6, I actually have queen f7, king h6, knight e6, this covered check with the bishop, and I pick up the queen. So actually even queen g7 mate is coming as well. So here black is in some real trouble. Therefore bishop f5 is the only move, and here after g4, which is threatening queen f5 mate for a second, but here black has this move queen d7, which completely solves all the problems, and he's totally winning. So that's why I don't recommend the move queen takes e4. Although it looks great and there can be other moves played, knight g5 is definitely not the best move, but the engine suggests move like b4. We really don't want to play moves like this, as black is better anyways, and the action is mainly towards the king. Playing moves like b4 is not the traditional way of attacking, I should say. So that's why here we go rook e1. And why do we go rook e1? The rook e1 is basically setting up a few ideas for ourselves. And if you really don't understand what's the idea, you once again press this letter X on the keyboard, and it says rook e4 is the next move for white. And yeah, of course, we play rook e1. It's more obvious, but you have to sometimes make sure you check the ideas. And here, of course, I checked knight e7, which is the only move. Once again, I denoted with the square. And here, if he plays any other move, such as bishop e7, which is a normal developing move. Rook takes e4 and rook f4 swings, and this is absolutely winning for white. That's why he has to go knight e7, attacking the queen, provoking queen takes e4. And after queen takes e4, now black can actually go back. He can go back to f7 and try to hide. And this is actually the only move once again. Let's say he plays a move like d5. We should actually understand why king f7 is the only move. It's the only move to keep its slight advantage. Because after d5, you realize the red signal on the engine, and it says queen f4 check, bishop f5, knight d4, and I believe the threat right now is rook takes e7. But let's check. Let's immediately check to verify ourselves. It is rook e7 or knight takes f5 followed by queen g5 check. So rook e7 is one of the ideas. It is winning, but it's of course not white to play anyways. So here queen d6 is a logical move. Queen g5 check, king goes back, knight takes f5. And the position is about slightly better, I should say. We can go until the end of the line. I tend to do it so that the dust settles down, and then I put the symbol I would like for the position's evaluation. For example, if he takes here, I see that we go queen takes d5, and this is absolutely winning position. The reason it's winning is we're going to pick this pawn up soon, and we're going to be up material, and the black king is suffering a lot in this position. That's why after knight takes e7, the suggested move is queen takes g5. We promote that. Bishop takes, and then here the move h6. Because black couldn't take the knight, since there is simply rook takes e7 winning the game. So after h6, trying to get rid of the defender of the knight. Here, apparently we can play multiple moves, but I think the simplest is just to grab 2 pawns in a row and be up a pawn, and after bishop d6, threatening bishop h2, we go g3, and here is an excellent position to stop. White is slightly better, and therefore d5 is not the most accurate move. So in this position, we are, remember, threatening multiple things, such as queen f4. So therefore, he has to run back home. And here, white has to continue his attack. So we go bishop g5, developing another piece, attacking the e7 square with more force. C takes b2 or d5, they're equally good according to me. So after c takes b2, rook a b1, we make sure we attack the pawn. We might have to pick it up at some point. Black goes d5 now. Queen f4 check, only move. King g8. Why king g8? Because if he goes king e8, this is very dangerous to stay on this e file. And here after some move like knight e5, we're threatening queen f7 mate. Black has to go bishop e6, otherwise it just looks very scary. And after rook takes b2 or something like that, white has decent compensation because of the potential attacks we have towards the black's king. Even the rook on the b file is actually doing something. So we're going to put the compensation sign in here. And after king g8, we go queen e5, attacking the e7 knight once again. And if king f7, there is actually not that many great ways because black is threatening to go queen d6. So if you want to play this with black, you can actually play king f7 and your opponent has to repeat. So after h6, and this would be a draw, of course. And after h6, we go bishop e7, queen e7, king h7. White wants to trade the queens and have his rook on the 7th. Black doesn't want that. That's why he goes king h7 so that the rook defends the queen. And after rook b2, something like b6, and the dust has settled down. The attack has actually died, and this position is actually better for black, believe it or not. But it's move 17, and you have seen so many things in the middle. What could have happened? I'm actually going to be playing this line as much as I can on my streams, and maybe I'll take some viewer games and actually try to build on to this line. It's very interesting. I recently saw it, and I did want to dig deep. So I hope you all enjoyed the analysis, but the conclusion is that black is actually doing totally fine if and only if they know exactly what's going on. So I hope you liked it, and I hope you have a better understanding of how things have developed. And note that I did not hide any of my analysis. This is all on the right hand side. You can just simply scroll down and up and even pause the video at times and see my notes. This is nothing private. You guys can take a look at it. I did use the chess-based tool to analyze all these lines, and hopefully you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you subscribe, like, and share the video, and hopefully I'll be doing more analysis videos for you guys later. So take care, and I'll see you in other videos.